My name is Robert. I'm 68 years old, a retired teacher, and I live alone in a small house outside Denver. I lost my wife, Linda, 5 years ago, and since then, my daughter Emily has been the only family I really have left, or at least that's what I thought. 10 days before Thanksgiving, I overheard something that shattered me. I had gone to Emily's house to drop off a gift for my grandson. As I was walking up the porch, I heard her talking inside with her husband. She said, laughing, "Dad's coming for Thanksgiving, but don't worry. After dinner, I'll finally tell him we're selling his house. He'll be so shocked. Maybe then he'll finally learn his place." My heart stopped. I couldn't believe my own daughter would say something like that. That house she was talking about, it was still under my name, but she'd been pressuring me to sign it over to her for months. That night, I sat alone at my table, staring at Linda's old photo. I whispered, "You were right, honey. Emily's changed." So, I made a plan. I decided I wouldn't let Emily humiliate me in front of everyone, not this time. I called my lawyer the next morning and changed my will, my bank access, and even my house ownership. Everything was transferred into a trust, one Emily couldn't touch. Then I packed a small bag and left town quietly. I didn't tell Emily where I was going. On November 27th, Thanksgiving morning, she called me. Her voice was sharp. "Dad, where are you? Everyone's here waiting for you." I laughed softly and said, "Emily, go to my room. Open my drawer." "What? Why?" she asked. "Just do it," I replied and hung up. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. She was screaming, "What is this?" Inside that drawer, I had left a note, a set of keys, and a photo of her as a little girl, holding my hand on her first day of school. The note said, "You used to hold my hand with love, not greed. You've already sold your kindness, Emily. The house, the money, they're gone. But I hope one day you find your heart again."
Emily stood frozen, staring at the open drawer. Her husband, Mark, walked in. "What's wrong?" he asked. She turned around, holding the note with shaking hands. He's gone. Dad's gone. And this says he changed everything." Mark frowned. "What do you mean, everything?" Emily's voice cracked. "He said, the money, the house, he put it all in a trust. I can't touch any of it." Her husband's face turned red. "You've got to be kidding me. You told me the house would be ours by Christmas." Emily broke down. "I didn't think he'd actually do it. He always needed me. He wouldn't just leave." But Robert had left, not out of anger. He had left out of heartbreak. Meanwhile, 300 miles away, Robert was sitting quietly in a small cabin near the mountains, sipping coffee while the snow began to fall outside. He looked at his phone, 12 missed calls, all from Emily. He sighed. For years, he had helped her with bills, babysitting, even down payments. He'd sold his old car to help her buy a bigger house. But no matter how much he gave, Emily wanted more. Now, for the first time, he felt free. He opened his laptop and began writing in a small journal he'd started the day Linda died. He typed, "Today, I let go. Not of my daughter, but of her greed. Maybe one day she'll remember love again." That night, his phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Dad?" It was Emily's voice, trembling. I didn't mean to hurt you," she said softly. "Please come home." Robert stayed silent for a few seconds. "Emily, Do you even know why I left?" "I know," she whispered. "I heard you changed everything. But you didn't have to. You could have talked to me." Robert let out a bitter laugh. "Talk to you? Emily, you were planning to humiliate me in front of everyone. You said you wanted to kick me out." There was silence on the other end, then a quiet sob. "I was angry," she said. "Mark kept saying you were holding us back. He said we'd never have a good life if you didn't sign the house over." Robert's tone softened a little. "And you believed him?" "I don't know anymore," she whispered. "He left. When he found out the house wasn't ours, he packed his things and left." Robert closed his eyes. "Maybe that's for the best." 3 days later, there was a knock on the cabin door. Robert opened it and froze. It was Emily. Her face was pale, her eyes red. She was holding a pie, pumpkin, just like her mother used to make. "Dad," she said quietly, "can I come in?" Robert hesitated, then nodded. She stepped inside and looked around at the small, cozy room. It's peaceful here," she said softly. "I forgot how much you love the mountains." He smiled faintly. "My mother and I used to come here every Thanksgiving, before the world got busy." Emily looked down. "I miss her too." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled in the fireplace. Outside, the snow kept falling. Finally, Emily said, "I read your note again, the part that said, 'You've already sold your kindness.' You were right. I let money control me." Robert's eyes glistened. "You're my daughter, Emily. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted you to remember who you were." She wiped her eyes. "Can I stay for dinner?" He smiled warmly. "I was hoping you'd say that." That night, father and daughter sat at the small wooden table. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. The silence between them was no longer cold. It was peaceful. When Emily finally looked up, she said, "Dad, thank you for not giving up on me." Robert took her hand and smiled. "Thanksgiving isn't about what we have, Emily. It's about who we still have." She nodded. "Then I'm thankful for you." Later that evening, as Emily dozed off by the fire, Robert looked at his wife's photo one last time and whispered, "Linda, she's coming back to us. Maybe love still wins after all." And for the first time in years, he felt truly at peace.
The next morning, Robert woke up early. The cabin smelled like fresh coffee and cinnamon. Emily was already up, wearing one of her mom's old aprons and cooking breakfast. He smiled quietly. It reminded him of Linda again, her soft humming, her gentle hands. Emily turned around and said, "Good morning, Dad. I made pancakes, just like Mom used to." Robert chuckled. "You're improving, kiddo. I remember when you burned toast every morning." She laughed softly. For a moment, it felt like the old days again, before money, before arguments, before pride. After breakfast, Emily sat across from him, serious this time. "Dad," she began, "I want to make things right, not just with you, but with myself." Robert tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "I've been living for appearances, trying to impress everyone, friends, neighbors, even people online. But in the process, I lost me, and I almost lost you." She looked down, tears filling her eyes. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." Robert reached across the table and gently held her hand. "Forgiveness isn't something you earn, Emily. It's something you accept. You're my daughter. That's enough." Later that week, they went into town together.
Emily hadn't been to that little mountain town since she was a child. They stopped by the old diner Robert used to visit with Linda. The waitress, an older lady named Carol, recognized him right away. "Well, I'll be, Robert Lewis. Haven't seen you in ages." Robert smiled. "Still making the best apple pie in Colorado?" Carol laughed. "Only if you promise to stay for a slice." Emily smiled, watching her father laugh, realizing she hadn't seen him this happy in years. That afternoon, Emily helped him decorate the cabin for Christmas. It was something Linda always loved to do right after Thanksgiving. They hung up old ornaments, strung lights across the window, and placed Linda's favorite angel figurine on top of a small pine tree. Emily touched the angel gently. "Mom would have loved this." Robert nodded. "She's still here, Emily. In every light we hang, in every laugh we share." For the first time, Emily didn't cry when he mentioned her mother. She smiled instead. A week later, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived for Robert, handwritten, official-looking. Emily brought it in. "Dad, it's from your old school district." He opened it carefully. Inside was a message that said, "Dear Mr. Lewis, after reviewing your decades of service, we're pleased to inform you that the board has decided to name our new library after you, the Robert Lewis Learning Center." Emily gasped. "Dad, that's incredible." Robert nodded modestly. "I don't need my name on a building, but it's nice to know I made a difference." Emily hugged him tightly. "You did. You made a difference to me, too." That night, as the snow fell outside, they sat by the fire again. Emily said, "You know, I've been thinking, maybe I should sell that big house in the city. It's just full of things that don't matter." Robert raised an eyebrow. "And what will you do instead?" "I want to move closer to you. Start small. Maybe open a bakery or a cafe. Something simple, something real." Robert grinned. "That sounds like the best idea you've ever had." Months passed, and Emily kept her promise. She sold the house and moved to the mountains. Together, she and her father opened a small coffee shop called Linda's Table. On the wall, they framed the same photo Robert had once left in the drawer, the one of little Emily holding his hand. The cafe became a local favorite. People loved the warmth, the laughter, the father-daughter duo who always treated everyone like family. One afternoon, a young couple came in. The woman whispered to her husband, "That's the man from the library dedication. He used to be a teacher, right?" Robert overheard and smiled kindly. "Yes, ma'am. Still teaching, in my own way." He pointed to Emily, who was serving pies. "She's my best student." Emily turned, grinning. "And he's still grading my recipes." Everyone laughed. That night, as they closed the cafe, Robert looked at Emily and said, "You know, 10 days before Thanksgiving, I thought I lost you forever. But maybe losing everything was what we needed to find ourselves again." Emily hugged him tightly. "You didn't lose me, Dad. You saved me." Robert looked out the window, where the snowflakes drifted softly against the glass, and whispered, "Thanksgiving isn't just one day of thanks, it's a lifetime of second chances." And under the soft glow of their cafe lights, they shared one last quiet moment, grateful, at peace, and together again.
Spring came to the mountains, and Linda's table was busier than ever. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the air every morning. Locals would come, not just for the food, but for the warmth. Emily had become the heart of the cafe, greeting everyone with a smile. Robert usually sat near the window, reading his old books or chatting with customers about life, history, and kindness. One morning, a young boy named Jake, maybe 10 years old, came in with his mother. He was quiet, shy. Emily noticed he kept looking at the bookshelf in the corner.
Robert waved him over. "You like reading, son?"
"Yes, sir, but I don't have many books at home."
Robert smiled. "Then take one. Any one you like." Jake's eyes widened. "Really?" "Of course," Robert said. "Books are meant to be shared." The boy left that day beaming. Emily watched the scene and whispered, "Mom would have loved you for this." Robert smiled softly. "Your mom loved kindness, not fame. The world could use more of that." Weeks passed. Business grew. Emily even started baking pies for local events. But she noticed something about her father. He was getting tired more often. Sometimes he'd pause mid-sentence, rub his chest, or lose his balance slightly. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked one evening. He forced a smile. "Just getting old, sweetheart. Don't you worry." But she did worry. The next day, while Robert was taking a nap, she quietly called Dr. Graham, his old physician from Denver. The doctor agreed to come up the mountain for a visit. When Robert woke up and saw the doctor, he frowned. "Emily, you didn't have to—" She cut him off gently. "Dad, please, it's just a checkup." The doctor ran a few tests, listened carefully, and finally sighed. "Robert, your heart's weaker than before. You need rest. No stress, no heavy work." Robert chuckled. "Doctor, have you ever run a cafe with your daughter? That's the definition of stress." They all laughed, but Emily's heart felt heavy. That night, she sat beside him by the fire. "Dad, maybe we should hire someone to help at the cafe. You don't have to do everything." Robert smiled, sipping his tea. "You don't get it, Emily. This place keeps me alive. It's not work. It's purpose." He leaned back, eyes glimmering in the firelight. "When your mom passed, I thought my story ended too, but you gave me a new chapter." Emily's voice cracked. "You gave me one first." Summer came. Tourists started visiting the cafe after hearing about the father-daughter story that inspired a whole town. Local news even did a small feature about them. One day, a reporter asked Robert on camera, "What would you say to people watching who've been hurt by family?" Robert smiled thoughtfully. "I'd say, don't give up on love. Sometimes the ones who hurt you most are the ones who need your love the most." The clip went viral online. Within a week, Linda's table became a symbol of reconciliation and second chances. But not everything was perfect. One morning, Robert collapsed while arranging flowers at the cafe. Emily screamed, "Robert! Dad, stay with me!" He was rushed to the small hospital in town. Hours felt like years. Emily sat in the waiting room, clutching his old wedding ring that he always kept in his pocket. Finally, the doctor came out. "He's stable now, but he needs rest. His heart's fragile. You'll have to slow him down." Emily exhaled deeply in relief. "Oh, thank God." When Robert woke up, Emily was sitting beside him, tears in his eyes. He reached for her hand weakly. "Hey, kiddo, don't cry. I'm still here." "I thought I was going to lose you," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "You can't get rid of me that easily." Then, in a soft voice, he said something that made her break down completely. "Promise me something, Emily. If anything ever happens to me, keep the cafe alive. Not for me, but for us, for what we learned." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I promise, Dad. I promise." A month later, Robert was back home, recovering. Emily didn't let him lift a single plate. Instead, she brought the cafe to him. Every day she'd bring him stories from customers, how a couple reunited there, how a lonely veteran found friends, how kids came after school to read from the free bookshelf. Robert would smile each time. "That's what it's about, Emily. People finding home again. That fall, as Thanksgiving approached once more, Emily prepared something special. She decorated the cafe with candles, leaves, and photos of all the people who'd visited that year. At the center of the wall, she placed one large frame, a picture of her, her dad, and her late mom. That evening, the townspeople gathered. When Robert entered, everyone stood and clapped. Emily took the microphone and said, "1 year ago, I nearly lost everything. My family, my father, myself. But I learned something precious. Forgiveness heals more than pride ever could." She looked at Robert with tears in her eyes. "This cafe isn't mine. It's ours. Every smile, every story, every second chance, it all started with him." The crowd cheered. Robert tried to stand, but Emily gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "Rest, Dad. You've done enough." He smiled softly. "You have no idea how proud I am of you." As everyone sat down for Thanksgiving dinner, Robert raised his glass. To love, to forgiveness, and to finding family again, even when we think it's too late. Everyone echoed, "To family!" And as the lights glowed and laughter filled Linda's table, Emily looked at her father, realizing the truth. Sometimes, the greatest miracle isn't what we gain, it's what we get back.
Snow began to fall again that winter. It had been exactly 1 year since the day Emily found her father's note, the note that had changed everything. Linda's table was still glowing every evening, candles flickering in the window, laughter spilling into the cold air outside. The cafe had become more than a business. It was a symbol. But one cold December night, as Emily was cleaning up, she found something she hadn't seen before. It was an old wooden box tucked behind the bookshelf near her father's chair. The box had her mother's initials carved into it, L.L. for Linda Lewis. Emily froze. "Mom's box," she whispered. She carried it home to her father. "Dad, look what I found behind the shelf." Robert's eyes widened. "I thought that was lost years ago." He carefully opened the box. Inside were old letters, photos, and a folded piece of paper tied with a blue ribbon. Emily asked softly, "What is it?" Robert took a deep breath. "It's a letter your mother wrote before she passed. She told me to give it to you when the time was right. I guess I never knew when that would be, until now." Emily's hands trembled as she untied the ribbon and began reading. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, it means life has taken you far, maybe too far. But I want you to know, you were born with a heart full of light. Don't let the world dim it with greed or pride. Love your father the way he loves you, quietly, endlessly, without asking for anything in return. And if you ever lose your way, come back home. He'll always be there waiting, with a cup of coffee and a story to tell." By the time she finished reading, Emily was crying silently. Robert reached out and held her hand. "Your mom always had a way with words." Emily nodded through her tears. "She still does. She knew exactly what I needed to hear." Weeks later, Emily decided to do something special in her mother's memory. She started a small charity event every Sunday at the cafe called the Kind Cup Project. For every coffee they sold, one was donated to local shelters and hospitals. The first Sunday, only 10 people showed up. The second week, 50. By the third, the whole town came to help. Robert sat by the counter,
smiling proudly as children handed out warm drinks to volunteers. "This," he whispered, "is what your mother dreamed of. Love that keeps giving." As months passed, Robert's health stayed steady but fragile. Emily never left his side. They watched sunsets together, shared quiet dinners, and laughed about little things. One evening, while closing the cafe, Emily asked, "Dad, do you ever regret what happened before Thanksgiving last year?" He smiled softly. "No, because it brought us here." She looked puzzled. "But it was so painful. I hurt you." Robert shook his head. "Pain isn't always bad, Emily. Sometimes it's the only thing strong enough to wake our hearts." She smiled faintly. "You always know how to make things sound like a poem." He chuckled. "Old teacher habits die hard." A few days later, a letter arrived in the cafe's mail, sealed in a fancy envelope. Emily opened it curiously and gasped. It was from the city mayor's office. "We are honored to inform you that Linda's Table has been nominated for the Community Heart Award, given to establishments that inspire kindness and connection." Emily ran to her father. "Dad, we're being honored by the city." Robert smiled proudly. Your mother would have cried tears of joy. He leaned closer and whispered, "This is all you, Emily. You turned our pain into something beautiful." The awards ceremony night came. Emily helped her father dress in his favorite brown coat, the same one he used to wear when he took her to school. At the ceremony, as they stood on stage, the mayor handed them the plaque and said, "This award goes to a daughter who found her way home and a father who never stopped waiting." The audience rose to their feet in applause. Emily hugged her father tightly, tears in her eyes. Robert whispered in her ear, "Now do you see? Sometimes what we lose isn't gone. It's just waiting to return stronger than before." Later that night, back at the cafe, they placed the award next to the framed photo of Linda. Emily lit a candle beside it and said, "We did it, Mum." Robert looked at the flame and murmured, "She always believed in us, and she was right. We just needed to remember." They sat there quietly as snow began to fall again outside, just like it had 1 year ago when everything changed. Before going to bed, Robert walked to the window and looked out at the mountains. "Linda, our girl's doing fine. She finally found her light again." And for a moment, he could almost hear her voice in the wind, soft, loving, proud. "I know, Robert. I know."
Winter had returned to the mountains once more. The snow outside Linda's table sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars. And inside, the smell of cinnamon and fresh coffee wrapped the place in warmth. Emily stood behind the counter, watching her father, Robert, reading quietly near the window, the same spot where he always sat. He looked peaceful, the golden evening light brushing against his silver hair. A year had passed since their cafe won the Community Heart Award. Business was thriving, but more than that, hearts had healed. Yet deep inside, Emily felt something shifting, something she didn't want to admit. Her father was slowing down. He moved gently now, spoke softly, and sometimes forgot what day it was, but he never forgot her. One evening, as they closed the cafe, Robert said, "Emily, do you remember your 10th birthday? You made a wish before blowing out the candles." She laughed. "You mean when I wished for a pony?" He chuckled. "No, you whispered something else. You said, 'I wish Mom and Dad never grow old.'" Emily's smile faded slightly. "Yes, I remember." Robert looked at her kindly.
Well, kiddo, we don't get to choose time, but we do get to choose what we leave behind. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. "I've been writing something for you," he said, handing it to her. On the cover, in faded ink, were the words, "Lessons for my daughter." Emily opened the first page. Her breath caught. Lesson 1, never measure love in money. Lesson 2, forgive faster. Time isn't as long as we think. Lesson 3, when life feels heavy, look for the light, because you are someone else's light too. Her eyes filled with tears. "Dad, when did you write all this?" He smiled faintly. "Every night after you went to bed. I wanted you to have something when I'm gone." "Don't say that," she whispered. But Robert only squeezed her hand gently. "It's not goodbye, Emily. It's preparation." The next few weeks passed quietly. Snow blanketed the mountains. Emily noticed her father spending more time outside, just sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon. One morning, she brought him his tea and found him humming softly. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. He smiled. "About my mother. About how she used to make me promise to smile every day, no matter what." Then, after a pause, he added, "Promise me something too, Emily. Anything. When I'm gone, don't shut this place down. Keep the doors open. Let people feel the warmth you've built. That's your gift to the world." Emily's voice trembled. "I promise, Dad." He smiled. "That's my girl." A few days later, on a crisp Sunday morning, Emily awoke to find Robert sitting in his favorite chair by the window. The sunlight was spilling across the floor. His eyes were closed. He looked peaceful, almost smiling. But he wasn't moving. Her heart dropped. "Dad?" she whispered. No answer. Tears filled her eyes as she knelt beside him, holding his hand. It was still warm. On his lap was a folded note. Her shaking fingers opened it. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, I've finally gone to have coffee with your mom again. Don't cry, sweetheart. You gave me more joy than I ever deserved. Remember what I told you. Life isn't about what we own, but the love we give away. So keep giving, keep loving. And every time you see the sunrise over these mountains, know that I'm right there, smiling back. Dad." Emily clutched the note to her heart, sobbing, but in her tears there was peace. Outside, the snow began to fall gently, just like it did the first day they reopened their hearts to each other. 6 months later, Linda's table was still open, now brighter than ever. A small plaque hung by the door. "In memory of Robert and Linda Lewis, who taught us that forgiveness is the purest form of love." Emily ran the cafe with grace and warmth. Every Sunday, she continued the Kind Cup project and added a new tradition, Robert's Story Hour. Children gathered every weekend to hear her read from her father's notebook. She'd begin each session with his favorite words. Lesson 1, never measure love in money. Sometimes she'd look up at the window and swear she could see him sitting there, smiling, proud. One autumn afternoon, a young woman entered the cafe, holding a notebook that looked just like Robert's. She said shyly, "Are you Emily Lewis?" "Yes." The woman smiled. "I'm Jake's mom. You might not remember, but years ago your father gave my son his first book here. He's now in college, studying to be a teacher. He says Mr. Lewis changed his life." Emily's eyes filled again. "Thank you for telling me." The woman looked around at the cozy cafe, at the laughter and love filling the air. "Your father would be proud." Emily smiled gently. "He already is." That Thanksgiving, Emily stood before a full house, friends, families, and neighbors. She lifted a cup of coffee high and said, This one's for my dad, the man who taught me that love always finds its way home. The crowd raised their cups. To Robert. And as the snow began to fall softly outside, Emily felt something, like a whisper in the air. It was her father's voice, gentle as ever. Happy Thanksgiving, kiddo. You kept your promise. She smiled through tears. I love you too, Dad. The camera slowly pans out from the warm glow of Linda's table, the laughter fading into the sound of snow falling quietly in the mountains. A symbol of love, forgiveness, and the second chances that make us human.